And I did a triathlon for my 40th birthday. Now I had an absolute panic attack in the water and had to stop for a little bit and, regain my wits about me. But I finished that triathlon and I did not die. And so then I was crazy enough to think, well, let me sign up for another one. So I signed up for another one 6 weeks later, did another triathlon, did another panic attack in the water, but didn't die. And now, years later, I've done 10 triathlons and I've literally had a panic attack in the water on every single one of them. And I just keep, being silly enough to keep signing back up, only because it keeps reminding me I can do big, hard, and scary things. It doesn't kill me.
This is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams. We're coming to you from the bunker down below the homestead today. Yes, we're hunkered down during the coronavirus situation, and it's one that has all of us sort of, in a way, just realizing just how fragile life is, and there's a lot of fear surrounding this. And I'm going to have someone on the show today who, ironically, is going to talk to us about how to overcome a lot of that fear. Now, get this. Her book is scheduled to come out on April the 7th. She is something that is just out of this world. She has a top 25 podcast. She's a 7-figure business coach. She coaches over 3,000 people a month. And this is her first book. And she was getting ready to go out on this multi-city book tour. And it was a big, big deal. And it all got canceled because of the coronavirus. But ironically, the book is on fear. And it's called Fear is Not the Boss of You, How to Get Out of Your Head and Live the Life You Were Made For. So I'm going to have Jennifer Allwood here on the podcast in just a minute, talking about timing that's just unbelievable. Victoria's not here. She is hunkered down at her place across town. She just got back a few days ago. She was in Hawaii babysitting for her kids while they went out of the country. And she decided when she flew back here, you know what, I've really got to be responsible and put myself in a quarantine for a couple of weeks before I go out and mingle with the rest of my family. Really, she just didn't want me to catch anything, I guess. So I want to tell you something crazy. I went to a premiere of a movie a couple of weeks ago, the red carpet thing, the whole big deal here in Nashville for the movie I Still Believe. And one of the gentlemen that we work with actually was diagnosed with, a few days later, having the coronavirus. So we got the call. And because we were hanging around him for some time that day, I decided, and a couple of other people decided to go out and get the test last week. Now, fortunately, my test came back in about 3 days, but I'll tell you, it was the longest 3 days of my life. I was feeling it. This is when the whole thing just really went crazy in the news media. And, I showed up there at the tent, and all these people had the hazmat outfits on, and it was a big deal. I felt like I was in a Steven Spielberg science fiction movie when I walked in that tent. Fortunately, it came back negative, but I want to tell you something. This thing has just scared the heck out of all of us. It's obviously closed down many, many of our businesses, and Jenifer is going to give us some real tips on how to take advantage of this time and how to sort of reinvent yourself and how to look at things a little differently. And I've been kind of freaked out about it. I even went out and bought one of those $50 thermometers so I can take my temperature every couple of times a day. I even went online and I looked at, where can I go where you can't get this virus? Okay. Because, I can do the radio show. I can do the podcast from anywhere. So where can I go? Of course, I want to be able to use my U.S. passport, and I want to be able to be somewhat of a U.S. citizen. So, of course, all 50 states, you have this virus. But I found out that as of the recording of this podcast, the American Samoa, right now there are no cases, no reported cases. So if I want to get on an airplane here in Nashville and go there, it takes me 19 hours and 50 minutes, and I can have all the tuna I want, because that is their biggest export there is tuna products. So I'm never going to go hungry. Okay. I'm going to be able to have tuna the rest of my life. Now it's somewhere out in the Pacific. I guess it's 7 islands. It's somewhere around or below the equator. So, it's probably nice and warm there. You can probably go to the beach and hang out. But listen to this. You can now fly to the American Samoa for $907 round trip. I mean, I'm like, that's a bargain? Well, maybe it's a bargain, anything to get us out of here and so we can live a somewhat normal existence. Who knows how long this is going to go on? I mean, this is just absolutely crazy. Hey, kudos to NYU. I just read that they're allowing students to graduate early. Okay, this is all students. I mean, if they're ready to graduate this year, they can graduate early as long as they help healthcare workers in the New York area. It's my understanding that some of these students who were scheduled to graduate later this year, they're taking the university up on it. And they're actually, get this, they're doing things like babysitting for doctors and nurses there in the New York area who are just really, really, a lot of these people are working around the clock, 7 days a week. It's just a horrific situation in the New York City area. But this represents America at its best. This is really giving us a chance to really bring America back together again. I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes from this. Of course, it's horrendous for the people who have lost loved ones and for those who are in the hospital right now fighting this crazy thing. So let's get on to the podcast interview that I just did moments ago with Jennifer Allwood. She is the author of Fear is Not the Boss of You, How to Get Out of Your Head and Live the Life You Were Made For. Hello, Jennifer. How are you?
I am doing so well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Obviously, the timing of your book couldn't be better.
Yeah.
How unfortunate.
Well, there really are some unfortunate things to it. I mean, we had a 12-city book tour planned starting on April the 7th when the book comes out. So that's all super unfortunate, and I'm trying to remind myself I don't have to give hugs in person for people to still buy the book. And also people aren't, traveling into bookstores right now. So that kind of stinks. However, and they are really obsessed just with the news, that's all over at the moment. So hoping that we can convince them to buy a book at the time.
Well, the name of your book is Fear is Not the Boss of You.
Absolutely.
So convince me of that, because every time I turn on the TV, they're just pounding away, every which way.
Absolutely. And when I wrote the book, I mean, nobody had any idea that we were going to be hit with a, pandemic in the world. And so, but it's interesting how the things that I wrote about in the book and how to deal with fear and how to get unstuck really apply more than ever to where we're at currently today. Because just like you said, when you're looking at all that content that's on social media and that's on the news and it's on the radio, and we really have like this crisis content barometer, you can only take so much of that before literally like your brain wants to explode. You know what I'm saying? And so what ends up happening is when you are ingesting all of that crisis content, you end up kind of spiraling. And a lot of times getting even more stuck, and you don't know what to do first. What do you do about your business? What do you do about your family? What do you do about your bank account? What do you do about all the things? And therefore you do nothing. And so it's interesting that I do approach all of that in Fear is Not the Boss of You. And I talk about when you're stuck, how that affects the people that are around you, when you are completely overwhelmed with indecision, or, in today's world, completely overwhelmed with too much information and crisis content and fear. And I also talk about just how to deal with fear from the perspective of there are still things on the side of heaven that God needs for us to do, regardless of coronavirus, regardless of the fact that we're all sheltering at home, regardless of the fact that now we're homeschooling 4 kids, in addition to running a business at home, but it all really applies for where the world is at today.
What do you find the biggest challenge is today in this situation that we're in? Because, we're in this crazy mindset that, well, first of all, we're getting all kinds of information. And the information one day says this, then it says that the next day. Everybody's debating on Facebook, which, of course, nobody knows anything, but everybody's an expert. We're just surrounded with these fear mongers, these crazy people. I don't know of any other way to put it. Is it realistic just to turn it off Or
It is so realistic to turn it off. It absolutely, but it's a discipline, right? Because I think what we're concerned about, the fear is if I turn it off, I won't, stay informed. If I turn it off, I won't know what's going on. If I turn it off, I'll be the last to know. And so we keep it on. But the truth is that the Bible talks about guarding our hearts, which means to literally like set a watchman over your heart. And the only way I can personally do that is to turn it off. And it doesn't mean that my head's in the sand, but it does mean that if there's anything that I need to know about, somebody will surely text me, but we haven't had the television on at all today at our house, simply because I can only take so much before I start leaning in the direction of, oh my gosh, the whole world, we're all going to heck in a handbasket too. And so in order just to protect my heart and my mind and that of my families, that of my children and my spouse, we are keeping it off. And I have to wait and look at social media when I feel like I'm in a good place. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Because if I just kind of keep it on and I keep scrolling all day long, it just makes my head want to explode. So I'll wait until I'm feeling confident, till I'm feeling like, okay, we're all going to make it, which by the way, we are, before I open up my social media. And I've had to unfollow a lot of accounts that were making me feel more fearful than they were more peaceful. Because I think right now what we really need is to be leading with peace. I'm so glad that this book is leading with peace. For somebody that has a large social media platform of 500,000 followers, I need to be leading on my platforms with peace and not panic. I need more prayer, less news. And so I'm also just taking kind of account of, okay, this account, when I see these people post, it makes me feel one way and it doesn't make me feel good. And so, unfollowing, hiding things, that is really helping me to save my sanity right now, as well as really limiting the time that I spend on social media.
So for someone who's listening right now who's thinking, gosh, that's easy for her to say. She's got basically an online business. Yeah, I mean, I know you coach like 3,000 people or so a month.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And so you're very fortunate in that, grant you, half those people probably can't pay this month, but nevertheless, realistically, there's somebody listening right now going, man, I'm glad she's got it together. I'm glad he's still doing his show. But I'm sitting here, I cut hair for a living or I work in a restaurant. I've been laid off. I have no idea how to pay the rent. Right. It's great that the banks might give the people with the mortgages a break, but what about me? Okay.
So pivot some more. So listen, for those people who are cutting hair, I just did a podcast this morning. It's on the Jennifer Allwood show this morning, actually, about I took 9 different industries and I told them, this is how you can pivot right now. And one of those was the hair industry. So it's interesting you just brought that up. So I literally have a friend who cuts hair for a living here in Kansas City where I live. And she is doing kits, like making people coloring kits, women, that she is making the kits at home and she's shipping them out. And she's doing a FaceTime with people, showing them how they can still color their hair even while they're at home. There are restaurants that are doing things like doing prepackaged meals, like freezer meals. They're just pivoting from, having people sitting in their dining room to now they're pivoting to having, hey, you can come pick up. I was reading an article this morning. A family of 4 can get dinner for $20 for a family of 4, or 3 dinners that are all frozen for like $50. So they're giving a discount on that. And that is the one thing that they said is going to keep their business afloat right now. People are pivoting like crazy. There's people that are tutors. This is a great time to be tutoring. If you're a mentor, if you're a coach, this is a great time to be just doing it in the online space instead of face-to-face. But there's still plenty of things that people used to be doing face-to-face. Let's take the real estate industry, for example. And they're now, because people still need to buy houses, there's still people being transferred. There's still people needing to sell their homes. There are people that are going to be gobbling up real estate based on financial projections. And so they are just now pivoting to using things like Zoom, FaceTime, Skype to basically do walkthroughs of houses without ever meeting face to face. So it is possible to keep your business above water right now. You're just going to have to think outside of the box and you're going to have to probably pivot. And what I think is going to be really super interesting is to see that after life goes back to some sort of normal, whatever that new normal looks like. It's going to be interesting to me to see how many people want to go back to the traditional way of doing business, or how many people are going to actually look at what's happened during this corona crisis and the pivot that they made and be like, you know what? This was actually I'm going to find some silver lining here. What the enemy intended for evil, God is using for good. And I actually love that I pivoted to this new place in my business. And that's my hope for so many entrepreneurs.
Wow. Now, your podcast, which you deal with this particular subject, and you give all these ideas, for these various industries, these various folks. Where can we find that?
Yeah, go find the Jennifer Allwood show. It is obviously in all places that you listen to podcasts. But like I was talking about I have a huge following of like DIYers, painters, artists, creatives. And I was saying right now is such a great time for you to get on Facebook Live and to like Bob Ross your way through your business. Do you remember Bob Ross? Like he used to paint the happy trees.
Sure.
People would sit and watch his videos for hours because people are really looking for some relief over all the content that they're seeing on the news and on their Facebook and Instagram feeds. And if they see somebody doing some painting, they will sit there and they will watch that. And so offer some painting classes. They're in their home, you're in your home. You tell them where to go get their supplies. They order them on Amazon, which is still up and working. And you can have painting classes that way. If you're someone in the health and fitness industry, maybe you can't still train somebody in your local gym, but I'm like begging a girlfriend of mine who's a personal trainer to start a paid group on Facebook where she's teaching people different workouts, and I'm just going to join along from home. Basically what Peloton has done so beautifully in the last couple of years. So working out from home is not like a brand new idea, but for a lot of trainers and people in the industry, it's a brand new opportunity. So go find that podcast. I'd love that.
Did you see where Peloton is giving its app free for 90 days because of this?
I sure do. And I sent that to all of the people that they're in my friend group. And I said, I've been telling you guys to get on Peloton. They did offer, I think it was free for maybe 14 days back when I joined them last fall. And the idea that they're doing it now for 90 days is brilliant because number one, it shows really goodwill towards all men. And number two, I love Peloton's workouts. I loved them before we even got the bike. And so it's genius that they're giving people an appetizer because people are still spending and they are going to want the full meal. They are going to actually like want to get a bike. There will be a portion of them that do. So I think it's brilliant that they're doing that. And Nike just came out with something. It's called like, oh gosh, I'm at a loss for what it's called. It's Nike something at home. And it's essentially workouts and things like that you can do from home as well.
Well, there's going to be a tremendous amount of innovation over the next few weeks.
Yes.
And I think what folks are going to find is that, gosh, this is what life is really like when I don't have to do a 2-hour commute.
Amen, right? I've worked from home and ran my business from home for 20 years. So this is literally all I know. My husband came home from corporate America 2 years ago to join me in my coaching business. But it is interesting when you're on the other side of that commute and you're on the other side of the PDOs and the traditional 401k, when you're on the other side of that. I've had so many of the entrepreneurs I coach every month say to me things like, gosh, how did I ever have time to like go to a 9 to 5? Or I had no idea like how it was just literally sucking the life out of me. Because there are so many other ways of doing business. And I think you can look at like what's happening in education right now. We have 4 kiddos, 3 biological, 1 we're in the process of adopting, ranging from kindergarten to senior, by the way. And it's interesting to see how the education system has just been forced to go completely into the online space and how they're making it work. Like our kindergartner FaceTimed with her kindergarten teacher today, and that's amazing. And so I just love the innovation that's coming out of this. I hate the reason that it's happening, but I love seeing people and watching businesses think outside of the box. And there are opportunities to be had if people will look for them.
Well, I think there's also going to be a lot of parents that realize that why am I sending my kid to school there so that they can hang out at the frat house for 4 years? It's a lot less expensive online.
It absolutely is. We have 2 teenage boys, a senior and a sophomore, and they are sneaker flippers. So basically they buy tennis shoes, mostly Nikes, from different sites, and then they end up flipping them on an Instagram account. And we actually are recording an episode for the Jennifer Allwood Show podcast tomorrow with my boys to try to teach some other teenagers right now how you can take an opportunity of the things that you know, because what do teens know? They know social media. Where is everybody right now? They're on social media. Facebook just put out an article yesterday. Facebook's having a hard time, even keeping up. And so my boys have been growing their little Instagram account and flipping sneakers, and they flipped 10 pairs of sneakers in 48 hours this weekend, even in the middle of a pandemic. So people are still buying, and there are so many great opportunities if you'll just kind of look for them. And if you'll not let fear be the thing that holds you back from actually starting it.
When you initially penned this book, when you wrote this, probably a year ago?
I wrote it last July and August.
Yeah. So you had no idea that this was all going to happen. What were the biggest issues that you were faced with at that time that you heard from your 3,000 people over and over again? What were some of the issues that you really focused on when you wrote the book?
Sure. So I've got those, 3,000 women that I get the honor of coaching every month, but I also have a social media following of over 500,000 people. So get lots of DMs every day and I see lots of comments on posts. And what I was finding is I was hearing so many women say things like, I want to start my own business, but I'm so scared. I want to go back to college, but I just feel stuck. I, want to try a new career, but I feel like I've been stuck in this place for so long. And in really fleshing out with my book agent, like, okay, I've got a big platform and I really want to serve as many of these women as possible. What should I actually write a book on? Should it come from a business angle? And I really didn't want to write a business book, but I found that the common thread was that people would come to me when they were scared and when they were stuck and overwhelmed, and they needed somebody to help get them out of that place. And so I wrote the book for that woman, the woman who is stuck in life. And by the way, if she's stuck, she knows she's stuck. Like it's like when people asked us, are you done having kids? When you're done having kids, you're done having kids. If you are stuck, you know that you are stuck. If I wrote it for the woman who's completely overwhelmed, and because she's so overwhelmed, she has a hard time taking any action. And the one that's she's scared to death. She's terrified of making a decision. So therefore she makes no decision. And oh, by the way, that's a decision. And so, it's for the women who are stuck and who are scared and are holding themselves back literally from the things on this side of heaven that God needs for them to do, and the things that they really want to do in their heart, but they're letting their feelings control their actions. So that's the woman that I wrote the book for. And man, it's interesting now that we're in the middle of a pandemic to see how many more women are feeling stuck, and maybe their businesses or their lives were chucking along as normal, but now that everything is kind of feels like we're trying to nail Jello to a wall or baptize a cat here. Everything's loosey-goosey and nothing's the way it was just 3 weeks ago. Now there's women coming to me and going, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do first. I don't know how to get out of this place of being stuck. I'm scared the whole world's going to end. And so this book applies so much to that woman in the middle of a pandemic as well.
What was looking back on your life, what was the one biggest fear that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, this is going to be a funny story. This is not going to be what you're expecting. But when I was 39, I decided that I wanted to do a triathlon for my 40th birthday. And I have a whole chapter on this in the book, which is, I'm not an athlete. I played sports and things in high school, but I'm also 48 years old. But when I turned 40, when I was 39, I had gone to a triathlon. I had watched 800 women in Kansas City at the Win for KC triathlon, like jump in the lake, and they swim, biked, and ran. And I just kept thinking, gosh, there was like some 70-year-old women that were in that triathlon. And I kept thinking, I want to do one of these. Like, I want to do a triathlon. I want to do it for my 40th birthday. And then I remembered, oh gosh, I can't even swim. And so I'd never learned how to swim as a child. I joked in the book that I was a sinker and not a swimmer. And, I would literally, like, water would hit my face in the shower and I would like snort water. It was the weirdest thing. And my family were not swimmers either. My parents were not swimmers. And so I decided to hire like my kid's swimming coach when I was 39 to teach me how to swim, which meant literally her holding my hands in our neighborhood pool, for 10 minutes while I cried before I finally bobbed my head underwater. Like people who are scared of something like swimming or like putting your head underwater, like it's a really real feeling to be that terrified of something. And so over the course of a year, I learned how to swim. For my 40th birthday, I did a triathlon. It was really cool. The Today Show sent out a crew to cover that. There was myself and 8 friends that we trained for it, and they did a whole segment on it on the Today Show, which was really fun. And I did a triathlon for my 40th birthday. Now I had an absolute panic attack in the water and had to stop for a little bit and, regain my wits about me. But I finished that triathlon and I did not die. And so then I was crazy enough to think, well, let me sign up for another one. So I signed up for another one 6 weeks later, did another triathlon, did another panic attack in the water, but didn't die. And now, years later, I've done 10 triathlons and I've literally had a panic attack in the water on every single one of them. And I just keep, being silly enough to keep signing back up, only because it keeps reminding me I can do big, hard, and scary things. It doesn't kill me. And it's a really good discipline. What I'm learning in the water about still panicking, but still doing it anyway, is showing up in all these other places in my life. It's the thing that helped me to write a book that I was scared to write. It's the thing that helped me to do a conference for 600 women last year when I don't like public speaking. It's a thing that helped my husband and I take in a 5-year-old little girl when we're in our late 40s, and now we're knee deep in the adoption process. So, fear shows itself in many different ways. It manifests in many different ways. But I think if we can figure out how to handle it in one area, that it really helps in so many other areas of your life as well.
Let's talk about being stuck. and being stuck with the wrong person. Because
Yeah.
I've been there. I'm sure that we've all been there. I know you've been there. Let's talk about what that does to your potential and how to get out of that.
Well, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think it was Jim Rohn that said that. But, I think we can all probably look back on our lives and remember times that we were stuck. Maybe it was stuck with the wrong person. Maybe you're stuck in the wrong job. Maybe you're stuck in the wrong town. But I think that so often we find ourselves stuck because at least we know stuck. Like at least we've gotten comfortable with the fact that this isn't the best for us, and we know it's not the best for us. But we're so terrified of the unknown that a lot of times we are willing to stay stuck, even if it's dangerous, even if it's breaking our heart, even if we know that's where we're not supposed to be. But oftentimes this is why women in particular will stay stuck, especially women who have ever been deeply, deeply wounded and who have come out of trauma. Those women will usually, they will, stay stuck longer. It'll be harder for them to transition out of that simply because at least they know what to expect when they're in stuck and they're with other stuck people. Getting unstuck, which often means having to change the people that you hang out with. It often means changing your physical location. It often means changing the way you think. It means becoming a different version of yourself. And for a lot of people, that is very vulnerable feeling and it's very difficult. And I'm always so proud of a woman when I see her do it. And yet I think the reason so often we see people staying stuck is simply because at least they know what to expect there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you're stuck, you don't have the ability to move forward.
Yeah, you don't have the ability to move at all.
to move at all. So give us a time in your life where you were stuck, you were just stuck dead in your tracks. How'd you get out of it?
Sure. Okay. So I can give you a great example of this actually. So I went to college straight out of high school, like a lot of people do, and went for 1 year and blew my scholarship because I was doing a lot of fun things at college, but none of them pertaining to my studies. So dropped out of college and went back as a 25-year-old. And I really, 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 really wanted to get a degree in interior design and in decorating. So that was 23 years ago when computers were a brand new thing. And so was HGTV. And so was the whole idea of DIYing your house. And I talk in Fear is Not the Boss of You about some television shows that I was obsessed with watching. There was one in particular called Trading Spaces. And I would watch these designers they would hot glue flowers to walls. It was the craziest thing, David. They would glue straws to kitchen walls, and they would just do crazy things. And it wasn't that I was attracted to that, but I just loved the idea of creating an environment that was different and warm and friendly and colorful. And I had bought my first home, by the way, at age 21. So I had a house. So I really wanted to go in that direction. But when I met with my college advisor, I told her, I just don't think I can make any money off of interior design. I didn't know anybody that had an interior designer. I didn't know even how you would make money in that area, but I did know that all these people were buying computers, and computers were the up and coming thing. And there was now computers at college. And so I decided that I would get a career in computers simply because I thought I could make an income and I thought I would starve as a designer. So it took me 5 years to get that degree, nights and weekends. I put myself through night school while I worked at a day job, and got to the end of that degree and graduated, in magna cum laude in my class with honors. It was great. I worked at a software development company, had a good job, but I hated it. I wore a pager, I wore pantyhose. I hated the whole thing, but I felt bad because I was also a super responsible person. And I talk about super responsible people in Fear is Not the Boss of You, how we're really conditioned to do the next right thing and the next right thing. And many of us are way more mature than what we need to be at a way earlier age than we should be, which, example of that is I bought a house at 21. But super responsible people, they do the traditional 9 to 5, and they, have PDOs, and they have the 401k match, and they do what's expected of them. And so I was doing that, but I was miserable. And so I decided to take a weekend painting class to learn how to do decorative painting and faux finishing. And it was wonderful. It was a weekend where I went and learned how to make your walls look like marble, or how to texture your walls to look like, the inside of a restaurant or something. And I loved every second of it. So I started a little side job in the evenings and weekends of painting for people. And then I did my daytime job of sitting at my computer, which I hated every day. And I have never felt more stuck in my life of just going into a job I hated, pretending that I was interested in any of it, waiting for that clock to hit 5 o'clock every day, mad that they were making me stay till 4 o'clock when I was done with my work at 3, but I didn't know how to get out of that. I felt so stuck. And the good news is I'm a woman of faith and a woman of prayer. And I had prayed about it and I got laid off from that computer job. If I had not got laid off, I don't know that I ever would have left on my own. Honestly, I could probably still be there today. Hopefully not. But I was so stuck not knowing how to get out of that traditional 9 to 5 and do what everybody expected me to do and, meet the bills of a mortgage. And I'm so glad that God saw to it that I got laid off from that job. And then I was like, well, I've got this little side painting thing on the side. I wonder what would happen if I really tried to make this into a business. And I ended up owning and running that company. It's called The Magic Brush in Kansas City for 17 years. At the end of that career, I had 8 women who were painting for me every day out in the field. It was amazing. We had a great role of that.
We can relate that story to what's going on right now. A lot of people are stuck in their position. They've been thinking about
losing their position.
They've been thinking about getting out of it for a long time, but they just haven't been able to make that leap. Right. And it's like God is giving everybody a big, kicking out everybody out of the nest, out of their comfort zones, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think we can learn from your experience that, there's a reason sometimes these things happen.
Absolutely.
As opposed to going, oh my gosh, my world is falling apart. Really what we should be doing is looking at it as a getting kicked out of the nest and learning to fly on our own and coming up with an alternate game plan. I'm probably up to S or T or R or someplace in there. I mean, I'm way past plan B, okay? Because you just got to keep moving forward and reinventing yourself, especially in today's world. Reinvention is key.
Yes, it is. And, I do believe that there are silver linings to be found everywhere. And again, what the enemy did intend for evil, I believe God will use for good. And so, it's so funny when I got laid off, David, from that day job, I still, even though I hated that thing, I still boo-hooed for days. I still woe is me. And I can't believe that they would let me go, even though I was using up all their time during the day, Googling, painting finishes anyway. And so in retrospect, I remember grieving. And I do think it's important that people grieve right now because everybody is losing something. They really are, whether it's money, whether it's peace of mind, whether it's a job, whether it's income. Everyone is losing something. And so I think it's really important that we grieve and then we get on with it. There are ways that you can pivot. There are ways you can finally maybe, try to do something you've been dreaming of for years and years and years. I think there's such a great opportunity for people who are willing to not let fear control their decision making because the truth is people are still buying right now. There are still people spending money. I had one of the women in my coaching group. She sells paint, like for painting furniture and things. And she put a message up in our group today that she hasn't used her email list in years. And she said she put an email out yesterday. She's got an email list of 5,000 people and she made almost $6,000 in 6 hours. But she hasn't used that list in years. So a lot of us have resources and talents and opportunities that perhaps we've let go dormant and we haven't used in a while. And now's a good time to resuscitate those things.
That's a great idea. A great reminder of, first of all, look what you have in your toolbox.
Yes.
Maybe you haven't looked in that daggone thing for years.
Agree, 100%.
And there it is.
Just stop the cobwebs and get on with it. Yeah, because I mean, the truth is there is a time for grieving. I do believe that, and we need to, we had a conference for 400 women here in Kansas City coming up next week. That has been canceled. My book tour for Fear is Not the Boss of You around 12 different cities has been canceled. I had to mourn that. I had a great outfit picked up for every one of those cities, David. I'm sad about that. But then I can't just stay down. I can't just keep focused on that because, I have people who need me, a community who need for me to show up, a family who needs me to get it together, God who needs me to do certain things on this side of heaven that he expects me to use my talents for. And so grieve and get on with it is kind of one of the key phrases I'm using with people right now. Guard your heart and your mind with watching, how much tragedy and crisis you're consuming on a daily basis, but look for an opportunity, look for a crack in the door. You just have no idea what you could find.
I don't really feel all that bad for you for your loss of your book tour because I think you're going to have about 50 zillion people typing in the keyword fear at Amazon.com and your book's going to come up on top. Whereas, you can do all the book tours you want. I think you have the ultimate exposure right now because I cannot imagine I mean, fear has got to be one of the key words on the internet right now.
I would have guessed so. I would absolutely
Well,
guess so.
well, I can tell you just from the calls that we're getting on our radio show, Keep the Faith, that's probably the number one topic is people are afraid.
Yeah.
So I think your book is coming out at the right time. The book is called Fear is Not the Boss of You, How to Get Out of Your Head and Live the Life You Were Made For. Jennifer Allwood, thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's so timely. Would love to have you back someday.
I would absolutely love that as well. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So Jennifer's book is scheduled to come out in just days. You can pre-order it on Amazon.com. Once again, it's just an amazing book that will help you navigate these crazy, crazy times and help you overcome the obstacle of this madness of fear. It's called Fear is Not the Boss of You, How to Get Out of Your Head and Live the Life You Were Made For. You know, this coronavirus situation has really... It's been something that we have never, ever, I know I have never experienced anything like this in my life. I was actually in New York City on 9/11. I was just blocks away from the World Trade Center. I think I remember everything that happened, everything that occurred on that day. I think I remember everything almost by the minute. And I think that what we're going through now is going to have the same impact on many of us for the rest of our lives. And I know my kids, they're in their early 20s, college students. I hope they never have to experience this again. But I just want to say, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, many of us, we had spring break coming up, and you may have asked the boss for that extra couple of days off, and you got a big no, and you were like, ticked off that you couldn't have that extra day or two off. And now here we are in this situation, and we not only have a couple of days off, we have weeks off, maybe even months, who knows, at this particular point in time. I just want to say that, think about it. The government is going to give us free money in the form of a check or two, or in the case of a family, you're going to get a bigger check. Plus, there are the unemployment checks that are going to be made up to help make the difference compared to the old unemployment amount. And then those of you who work for a small company, your boss is probably going to get an SBA loan that will cover your salary for the next few months, that the government is, they want to maintain those jobs out there. And of course, the IRS, they've moved their tax day backed up by 90 days. Who would have ever thought to July the 15th? Then I hear that some of the banks are considering suspending the mortgage payments to give you a little bit more time, and hopefully that will also have some impact on the rentals as well. I think now's the time that we just need to take a deep breath and thank God for our blessings. Use this time to catch up with our loved ones at home, or using technology like Zoom, Skype, or FaceTime. I mean, that Zoom thing's amazing. I see all these families on Facebook, having dinner together via Zoom all around the country. It's the time to read a book or even write a book. You know how many people tell me that they got a book in them? Well, guess what? Now you got the time to write that book that you've been talking about. I've had so many people tell me that they're writing a book. So now just go write it. Go build something or learn how to cook. Watch a master class. Those things are really cool. Or listen to a podcast. You're listening to this podcast. There are so many wonderful podcasts out there that you can learn from. Take time to pray, read a devotional. Think about just how wonderful life really is when we don't have these crazy situations, and, under normal circumstances, many times we just don't think about it. Well, now you have time to ponder it. And of course, if none of that works out for you, to keep you busy, there's always Netflix. You can just binge for the next umpteen weeks. So I just want to encourage you all to keep the faith. As long as we all do our part and play it safe and follow the rules, we're going to get through this. Let's just care for each other. Stay at home, embrace your family, pray, just love on each other, okay? I'm David Sams. I'm so glad that we spent this time together. I hope to have Victoria back here soon. I'm sure she will be, and I'm glad she's out taking care of her family. And I want to wish you all much, much safety, much love, and we'll see you next time here on Contagious Influences of America. Remember to live that life in living color. I'm not going to say go out there and live that life in living color because I want you to stay in. It sure is a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. We'll see you next time.